Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we'll be looking at one of the easiest concepts in physics. By the way, I'll box out the word physics and throw it in the corner. That way if you jump into the middle of a video you'll know what we're talking about. So, in this video we're going to talk about the relationship between displacement, velocity, and acceleration. Before we begin, an important concept to know for this video is what a derivative is. And we'll also be talking about, like I just said, the relationship between displacement, velocity, acceleration. But you're going to want to know what each one represents on their own. So if you're unsure about any of those four, go and refresh yourself and then come back. Okay, now let's get into it. So, we'll start off by looking at a pretty simple example. Let's imagine we have a box placed at x equals 0. And we push our box and it moves 5 meters before it hits a wall after exactly 10 seconds. So every object has a corresponding displacement versus time graph. In this case, the box slowly moves away from the starting point over time, as we saw. So our function is slowly going to increase over time, as you can tell by the graph. Now let's think about the rate of change. So to be specific, we're going to look at the instantaneous rate of change, which is just a fancy way to say derivative. And the derivative of the displacement is always, every single time, going to be the velocity. In this example, the velocity is constant at v equals 1/2 meters per second, meaning that for each second, the box moves 1/2 meter. So now let's take a step deeper and look at the derivative of that, the derivative of the velocity, which is the acceleration. So our box moves at a constant rate, and the derivative of a constant is 0. Therefore, the acceleration of the box is 0 meters per second squared. So I'm going to show you the box moving again from 0 to the wall at 5 meters, and I'll show you how that progresses through each function. Okay, so while that plays, in summary, we can make a displacement versus time graph to describe the motion of our box. Then we can make a velocity versus time graph to describe the rate that our box moves at. Then we can make an acceleration versus time graph to describe the rate of the rate that our box moves at. A much more concise way to say all that is every object has a corresponding displacement versus time graph. The derivative of the displacement is the velocity, and the second derivative of the displacement, or the first derivative of the velocity, which are the same thing, is the acceleration. Okay, hopefully that all made sense, because we're going to move on to a new example. So let's imagine we are outside, and we're holding a ball, and we throw it straight up, perfectly straight up. It goes up 10 meters, and then it comes back down, as you'd expect. It has to come back down. So, first let's think of our displacement versus time graph. If you can't already tell what it is, pause the video and try to think of what it looks like. Okay. So, in this new example, since the displacement does not change at a constant rate, because it goes up and it comes back down instead of just moving in one direction at the same speed, or at the same velocity, I should say, the velocity is not going to be constant, but the acceleration is, in this case at least. By the way, the acceleration in this example is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. This is a very important number in physics, or in classical physics at least, and it will definitely come up in many future videos, so don't forget that number. Okay, so now that we have all of our graphs, I'll show you what it looks like with the ball moving and how we progress through each graph. we will now look at a third and final example, but this time it's going to be different because I'm not going to give you the graphs. I am going to have you figure that out for yourself. So let's imagine a kid is playing with a remote control car, and he drives his car, or she, 7 meters forward, then turns around, comes back 10 meters, so he passes the initial starting point and goes behind where he started. Then he turns around and goes forward again. Without using any math or functions or anything, try to think about what the displacement versus time graph looks like, just visually. So don't worry about the time, don't worry about 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, whatever. Just worry about what it looks like in general. And once you think you have that, try to come up with the velocity and the acceleration graphs too. Once you think you have that figured out, look in the comments because I left the function I used for this example in there, and you can check if you were right. So that's all I have for this video. If you have any more questions or just comments in general, make sure to comment them. And I'll see you in the next one.